In this tutorial, I'm going to go through and I'm going to run my sword through Substance Painter. So in this case, this is, I have my Gladius. I've named the actual mesh itself. It's very important that the mesh gets named inside of the software, right? So this is _LP. If I go into unwrap UVW and open the UV editor, it is unwrapped, right? And we want to make sure that our sword is unwrapped. If you remember, we unwrapped it. We packed everything into this left-hand side, kind of small, and then we dragged it over because we're going to make a narrow texture, one that's twice as tall as it is wide. So if you haven't already, just right-click and convert to edit poly to make that permanent. I'm going to come in here to element. I'm going to select everything, and I'm just going to assign one smoothing group, which I already have. Perfect. And I'm going to go up to the top level. I'm going to put another edit polygon. And I'm going to, and if you haven't already, I'm going to come up here to the material editor. And we're just going to come in and bring in a standard, right click and assign that. So now I have only one material assigned to my sword. And so I'm going to do File, Export Selected. And I'm going to navigate to the location of it. And I'm going to export this out, bn_gladius_lp as an FBX file, save it, and then say OK. All right, so now we're going to right click and, we're just going to right click out here, and we're going to say clone as a copy, and we're going to call this HP and say OK. All right, now from here, let's go into, let's hide our low poly. You want to make sure that you're working with it as a copy, it's not an instance. Right-click, convert to edit poly. All right, so I'm going to go into Element for starters, grab everything and say Auto Smooth. And then I'm going to hit F4 to turn off the shading. Just orbit around. Make sure my smoothing groups look like I want. The only other thing I would say is I'm probably going to want to come in here and manually assign smoothing groups to the blade. So make sure you're on Select. You don't want to accidentally be clicking and moving. I'm going to come up here and turn on Edged Faces. I'm just going to go through, if I grab all the sword, it looks like it's all on ID 1 and 2. So I'm just going to start going through and removing and manually assigning groups to it, going from 3, 4, 5, and then 6. And then if I come over here, this is going to be 7, 8, 9, and 10. And really, the numbers really aren't important. You can use different ones. The important thing is that they're not the same. You don't want the same numbers being shared on the different parts of the blade. All right. I'm doing this because I do want to get this kind of little bit of an edge showing up when we bake it out. All right. So that's the first thing we're going to do. Now the next thing is, I showed you previously how you can mask in Substance by actually creating a mask. There's another technique that we're going to use now called, we're going to bake out an ID mask. And so this is our high poly, and I'm just going to click to the side so nothing's selected. And I'm going to bring over a multi-sub-object, and I'm going to bring over some materials. Let's make that smaller if I have it. So I'm going to call this blade. I'm going to call this next one handle. And then I'm going to bring over another one. I'm going to call this Handguard. Oops, and I misspelled it. No, I had it right. Boy, you know what? This is why I'm an artist. I can't spell. All right, Handguard. So let's plug these in now into our multi-sub-object material. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to click on that, set the number of it to 3, and then let's just change the color. I'm going to make the blade kind of a blue. I want to make the handle like a brown, and I'm going to make the handguard like almost golden. All right. So now let's click on our blade, and it helps sometimes to go to create, just so that when you right click on the material and assign it, you're assigning it to the whole thing. All right, so now we'll come over here to edit poly. I'm going to go into element. Let's grab everything and assign everything one ID. This is polygon material ID. So assign it all 1. And now let's select this part. We're going to put 2 on here. And then we'll go through and we'll start assigning it to the other parts. So let's go to the front view here. And so what if we named all of this? Oops, we're going to be in polygon for this. Well, we want parts of this. This will be 3. And then this will be 3 as well. All right. There we go. Now see, we could get this even fancier, right? What if I made this be ID 2, and I made this ID 2, and then I actually did a third, and we'll just change the name of this to wood, and then click here, give it one more ID, and we'll bring over one more standard and plug that in. And this one I'm just going to leave gray. I'm going to call this handle. And then we'll just grab those polygons that make up the handle. And we don't need to reassign this because just by adding that additional one in there, it automatically is aware that there is now a 4th material available. Click to the side, right? So now I have some different colors on it, right? And so by assigning different materials to the surface of the high poly, we will be able to generate a texture for our mesh that we can utilize for masking it. So we'll just do File, Export Selected, call this Gladius HP. Now, the way that baking works, the surface of the mesh looks around what's there, so they should be in the same location in the world. All right. So now we'll just jump over to Substance Painter. Oh, look, it's my column from before. We do File, New, again, Unreal Engine 4, Select, go to my Gladius. I'm going to select that Gladius and say Open and OK. Okay, there we go. There's my Gladius. It has no smoothing groups. Here's its materials. Let's go over to Texture Set Settings. And again, see under Texture Set List, there's only one material assigned, right? And that's because the low poly should only have one material. Now in here, we're going to change the properties. It needs to be half the size. We're going to change it to 1024. If you didn't see it before, I clicked on it. I turned off the padlock so that you would be able to go in there and actually change that aspect ratio, right? If you have the padlock on, then it locks the sizes, right? So I'm doing 1024 by 2048. And now I'm going to go into Bake Mesh Maps. Turn off the padlock, do 1024 by 2048, and now I'm going to click to select my high poly. There it is. Say Open, and I'll just come down here to ID and make sure it's set to ID bake parameters to get the color from the material, right? Which is what we want. We'll come back up to Common, and we should be able to just hit Bake Selected. It's going to go through and bake everything for us. If we click OK, now if we got our aspect ratio, if we had these settings backwards, we would know because now we can look and we could see those textures that are baked out. And you can see right here in the thumbnail that they're narrow. They will never show up not narrow in here. This always is square. But you can always check by double checking your IDs that are baked out. Right, and see, there's the ID. So now we'll just come over to layers. And just like we did with the column, we're going to do the same thing here. I'm going to bring over this leather and plug it in. And I can right click now, and instead of doing a black mask, I'm going to do mask with color selection. And now properties down here, I pick a color, I come in and I click where that color is. There it is. All right, it's that easy. Let's come down, let's grab some wood. Let's do this wood walnut. And again, right click, mask with color selection, and I'll pick that wood. Let's do this bronze armor. Looks really nice, right? And we'll do mask with color selection. We'll pick kind of those Handguard elements, and then we'll finish it off with our blade, which we throw steel on it. Click, add mask with color selection, pick color. There we go. All right. So now, again, you can work and you can tune and change and adjust these as you like. If you want to try different ones, you certainly can. If you want to do other material colors or other surface types, like if we didn't like this leather, we could get rid of it. And maybe we want to do like, if we want to do something, what if we did this bone stylized? Mask with color selection. What if we did that for the handle, you know? That looks kind of cool. All right. So there you go. You know, that's kind of the process for going through and doing this, for creating these. And you could try, of course, like I said, you could try out different ones that are here. You'll have different options. So, and you can always download new and additional ones. I believe some of the ones that I have here are ones that were downloaded from Substance Share, and so that's why you're seeing some different results happening. Now, that's really it for this. What I was also going to say, if you want, you know, one thing that can be fun sometimes is you throw something on like this steel painted worn, which I don't want. But what I do like is if I ditch the sharpen and if I ditch like the base metal of it, let's ditch the paint, the base metal, and let's get rid of some of this rust, and we can turn them on and off to see what these various things are doing, right? Like here's this nice little dirt layer if we want it. That just is something that gets layered on top, right? So there's a little bit of rust that's happening on top of it. I just stole that from another one. And you can see how these are done. There's basically, you do a fill layer and then you do masking on top of it. So it's a pretty fun process. As I mentioned before, this is all very well documented. You should dig into it more to learn more about it. We just don't have enough time to really dig too deep into it. So from there, of course, we're going to want to save this because we may want to come back to it. We may want to change up what we did. So let's save it. And then we're going to File, Export Textures. Again, we're going to use that Unreal Engine 4 packed. PNG is 8-bit. Click up here. And we're just going to go to that same location where our sword is saved. Select the folder and hit Export. Now if I come over here, again, I'm just going to rename these. And you can actually go through and set the parameters for exporting so you don't have to rename it. It's really not that difficult to do. There you go. And really, all I'm doing by renaming these is just a shortening them. I'm abbreviating them. So you finish it all off by getting a nice snip of your sword inside of Substance Painter. Right? And then along with that, you are going to turn in the Substance Painter image of your sword inside there, as well as your textures, because one of the things you're being graded on is your ability to go through and actually rename and to organize. Speaking of which, notice I am keeping my key projects in their own folder. Things like my arch, my column, my Gladius, right? All those are all working inside of their own folder, so I can keep them organized, so that when I bring them into Unreal in a couple weeks, I will be able to find my low poly and its textures, and I will be able to import those easily. And there you go.